President, I would like to start by congratulating you on the assumption of the presidency of the Security Council this month. We are here at the United Nations in our capacity as chair of the G77 to continue to pursue an extensive agenda based on multilateralism for the developing world. I am proud to say that under the chairmanship of Pakistan at the G77, under the chairmanship of Egypt at COP27, we saw a victory for multilateralism. We saw a victory for the developing world. And we saw a victory for climate justice with the addition of loss and damage to the COP27 agenda and the commitment to the establishment of a loss and damages funding facility. There are indeed many benefits of multilateralism, and they're very evident. This open debate has enabled me the opportunity to comment on, to respond to the concept note and the related questions circulated by the Indian presidency. In our complex world, confronted by multiple threats and challenges, inclusive multilateralism, multilateral processes within the framework of the United Nations offer the most promising prospects for promoting peace and security, economic and social development, and effective responses to the several interlocking global challenges we face. It is therefore of vital importance to empower and efficiently utilize all the main organs of the United Nations, the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the Human Rights Council, the International Court of Justice, and the Secretary General and Secretariat of the United Nations. We must also induct equality and democracy in the structures of global financial and economic governance, especially the Bretton Woods institutions. The UN General Assembly, the most universal global forum, must play a central role in reinforcing multilateralism and enhancing equity and justice in international relations. The world's attention must also turn away from pursuing narrow national ambitions and face collectively, multilaterally, first and foremost, the existential threats that we face as the human race, be it in the shape of the COVID pandemic, be it in the form of climate catastrophe and climate change, or the issues of the nuclear threat, terrorism, extremism, the increasing propensity for narrow-minded populism, authoritarianism, religious intolerance. We must confront the rise of the ideologies of hate, of xenophobia, of Islamophobia, of populist extremism, racial and religious intolerance, which impose discrimination and violence and even threats of genocide against vulnerable minorities in certain countries. Mr. President, the United Nations Security Council has the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Multilateral solutions under the umbrella of the Security Council offer the most effective approach to promoting peace and resolving conflicts. Parties to a dispute cannot advocate multilateral processes one day, multilateral reform one day, and insist on bilateral avenues the next, or ultimately impose unilateral solutions. Pakistan firmly believes that the major security problems, including those in our region, Madam President, can be effectively and peacefully resolved through the active involvement of the Security Council and the Secretary General. Multilateralism must be based on universal and consistent adherence to the fundamental principles of the UN Charter, self-determination of peoples, non-use or threat of force, non-acquisition of territory by the use of force, respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, and non-interference in their internal affairs. Strict adherence to the Charter's principles has become all the more essential in the context of recent and ongoing conflict. The Council must seek to resolve conflicts and disputes, not merely manage them. It should address the underlying causes of conflicts, such as foreign occupation and suppression of the recognition of rights of peoples to self-determination. And in accordance with their obligation, under Article 25 of the Charter, member states must implement the decisions of this very UN Security Council. The Security Council must act not only after a conflict has erupted, it must act preemptively to prevent and avert conflicts before they occur. The Security Council should be enabled to meet automatically, without a procedural decision, on any item which is already on its agenda, if so requested by a Council member or a concerned state. The Secretary General should be less resonant in exercising his authority under Article 99 of the Charter to draw the Council's attention to impeding threats to peace and security. And no party to a conflict or dispute should be able to refuse the Secretary General's good offices whenever these are offered, nor to reject recourse to the modalities for the specific settlement of disputes prescribed under Charter 8 of the UN Charter. Madam President, the Security Council should no doubt reflect contemporary global realities. The most significant changes in global realities is the emergence of a UN membership now composed by 193 mostly small and medium-sized states. They need to be equitably represented through the expansion of the Security Council. Adding new permanent members would numerically reduce the opportunities for the vast majority of the United Nations member states to be represented on the Security Council. We must adhere to the principle of sovereign equality of all, not the superiority of some. Surely we all believe that a further democratization of the United Nations, a further democratization of the UN Security Council, of the UN General Assembly, is what would empower this institution, would provide it with the moral authority to act. It does not serve the purposes of the United Nations to add more members to this elitist club, to expand the power of the tyrannical veto. It would serve this institution to further democratize, to allow for the principle of the sovereign equality of all and not the superiority of some. In the past, the Security Council has been unable to act due to differences among its permanent members. Adding new permanent members would multiply the possibility of paralysis at the Security Council. The problem cannot be the solution, and surely states which have a record of not implementing the resolutions of this very Security Council cannot be considered worthy of consideration for any form of council membership. The proposal of the Uniting for Consensus group to create 11 additional non-permanent elected seats to the council offers the most realistic option for an equitable and early reform of the Security Council. The UFC model would provide equitable representation to all member states and regions, including Africa. Periodic elections would enhance the accountability of the Security Council members. It would numerically and politically expand the influence and role of elected members in relation to the existing 5 permanent members. It would preserve the principle of sovereign equality. Madam President, all our endeavors to promote world order, peace and stability will come to naught unless we can realize the Charter's second objective, universal social economic development. As a result of the COVID pandemic, raging conflicts and the more frequent and ferocious impacts of climate change, nearly 100 developing countries are in extreme economic distress. Pakistan has convened a ministerial conference of the Group of 77 in China tomorrow and day after to adopt a plan for emergency action and systematic reform in the international financial, trade and technology architectures to ease the suffering of 1 billion people in the global south and realize the sustainable development goals and environmental objectives. Finally, Madam President, in your concept note, you call on us to advise and suggest and ways and means to move the multilateralism reform agenda forward. There is an agenda item left unaddressed, Madam President, that we believe is a multilateral agenda, that is an agenda of this UN Security Council. If we want to see the success of multilateral institutions, the success of multilateralism, the success of this very council, then surely you can aid in this process and allow for the implementation of UN Security Council resolutions when it comes to the question of Kashmir. Prove that multilateralism can succeed. Prove that the United Nations Security Council, under your worthy presidency, can succeed and deliver peace in our region. I thank you.
हर मुख्तलिफ न्यूज़ अपडेट के लिए iNews 365 को सब्सक्राइब करें और हमारे साथ जुड़े रहने के लिए नोटिफिकेशन बेल को क्लिक करना ना भूलें ताकि हर खबर रहे आपकी नज़र में।